All right, my lovers, how's it going? I wanted to talk a little bit about my channel and riding with Dan and some things over the years that I picked up from, cycling and just being around bikes, and give my audience a little bit of game. Now, a lot of the bikes I do, or a lot of the bikes I talk about, are the bikes that I currently have, but I started on the old school bikes. I started riding the way that I'm riding now. I started riding in about 2009. I grew up riding bikes, but I rode like Toys R Us, Walmart bikes, things like that. But I didn't start riding like the types of bikes I'm riding now that you could go many miles on. You'd be comfortable commuting to work. You could affix bike racks to them and all of that. And so, even though I talk about gravel bikes and I talk about through axles and things like that, old school bikes, my OG bikes that I love, are bikes from the 90s. I'm always going to love those style of bikes. And at the time when I was building bikes, that was just like right in the middle area. Like when it was 2009, that was like right in the era where, it was about like 10 speed going on to 11 speed. That was like the big deal at the time. But the spacing of my bike, the dropouts could fit between like, 7 to 10 speed. And I think there are some things about bikes that I'm always going to be in that era of. Like, my personal philosophy is that you don't really need more than 10 speeds. I have two bikes that are 10 speed and one that's 20 speed. They both have 10 speed. They all have 10 speed cassettes on it. But, 9 speed is cool. I like 9 speeds also. And so, I think like a lot of people, whatever era they grew up in, they're going to kind of cling to that technology. And I think for me, I'm definitely of the theory that the way that I ride, of the way that I've gotten used to riding, I don't really need more than a 10-speed cassette at the back. To me, that seems like a lot. I seem like I can get up everything I need to get up, and I'm cool. Now, one thing I do like about gravel bikes is the normalization of the wide range of gears so that you can get up to that 50. If you get the right group set, you can get a 50-tooth cog on the back. So I think to me, more than the amount of speeds, I kind of think like the amount of speeds, it's not a gimmick. I think, it just depends on your use case. But if you ride like I do, which is more for recreation and fun, the main thing for me is being able to get up hills, because you only need one gear to ride the flats, right? Like people ride fixed gear bikes all the time and they're cool. And people even ride fixed gear bikes in Seattle. I had many people in the fixed gear community that rode bikes. And, So for me, really, it's just about the gear range. It's not about the amount of gears. And old school bikes are cool. Like rim brake bikes are dope. Even though all of my bikes are disc brake at this point, for me, the main thing, I think, if you have multiple bikes, my main thing is multiple bikes. It's really good if they're all compatible. Like you can interchange parts. Now, it's not necessary, but it makes it a lot easier if you can just switch parts from one bike to the other. Your wheel sets can match all of your bikes, unless, of course, you've got bikes that are completely different styles. Like one's a mountain bike, one's a road bike. Okay, obviously the components are gonna be different. But if you have similar bikes, like you have a commuting bike and you have a sport bike, it's nice to have components that are similar. Now, it obviously doesn't matter, but that's just my preference. And this was also a preference when I was buying and selling bikes. I used to do like kind of when I started getting into bikes, I got dorked out and I'd be on Craigslist looking for bikes and trying to buy different bikes. And I feel like when I watch people make content about reselling bikes, there's a lot of kind of not misinformation, but they kind of make it seem like you can just buy a bike and like fix it up and sell it for more, which in some cases I was able to do that, right? Really, like the best case scenario when you're trying to resell a bike is if the person doesn't ride anymore, or it's a bike where people thought they were going to get into riding and they were just like, no, I'm not into it. One little thing happens, like a flat tire, and they're like, oh, I'm good. And then all you got to do is change the inner tube and like you fix it. Like, so if it was like something that was a little fix, or someone just completely abandoned a bike and was like willing to get rid of it for $40 because it was in pieces, but all the pieces are there, then things like that, I could make money on it. But those were rarer situations. Like, it happens. And if you want to make money like that, you're probably not going to make a ton of money like that, but you got to be on Craigslist like every single day and finding the bikes exactly when they are listed and then getting them as quickly as possible, having the cash ready, being able to negotiate those prices. But for people who just want to make a buck on bikes, to me personally, the most universal way to make money and the easiest way to sell a bike is in pieces. If you can take a bike apart, it's way easier to sell than a whole bike. So when people are like, hey, if you upgrade this bike, keep all the original components and then put them back on, I think don't do that. You totally do not need to do that, because there's such a market for people who just want to buy frames. There's a market for people who just want to buy wheel sets. There's a market for people who just want to buy crank sets. There's always a market for people who just want to buy one piece of a bike, you know. And the way I look at it is, if I break the bike down into pieces, it's way easier to find buyers than finding a buyer for the specific bike that you have built. Like, because this channel is called My Bike Build, and the tagline is all bikes are custom. That's really what it is. No one's gonna want to ride. Very few people are gonna want to ride the exact same bike as you want to ride. People have their quirks. People have their little things that they like to change about bikes. And so I always found it was easier to buy a bike and sell it in pieces and make way more money and be able to sell it way quicker than it was to try to fix up a bike to its OEM specs or close to its original condition and sell it. Now, again, if you find a bike that's pretty much intact and all you had to do is fix one or two things, then that's I wouldn't take it apart. But for the most part, frames just fly off. Like a road frame, for example, or a good mountain bike frame that people can put together will sell. Like, so, for example, when I had my Cannondale my Cannondale touring bike, it had been a while since I was in the buying and selling game. But then I just kind of remembered my roots. Eventually, I was like, wait, I had it on sale as a complete bike for, weeks. I would say even months. But then once I started breaking it down into components, it sold way, way faster. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to sell the wheels. I can sell the wheels with or without the tires. If the tires are newer, you can get a little bit more for the wheel set. So that's one thing you can sell off. You can sell off the wheels. You can sell off the crank set. You can sell off, usually not the pedals because they get wear and tear on them. But if you want to include them in a package, you can sell it. You can sell off the drivetrain in terms of if you have a front derailleur, if you have a rear derailleur, if you have shifters, you can sell off the shifters. You can sell off the handlebars. You can sell off the seat post. And frames that are just clean frames that allow people to build their own bikes on it, they go for a nice price. So ultimately, I think I was selling my Cannondale T400 for I was trying to get $200 for it. But then when I broke it down, I got way more for it. I sold the rear derailleur and the cassette for $30. I sold the wheel set for $40, so that's $70 right there. And then again, they sold way quicker than keeping the bike together. I sold the frame for $125, so there's already your $200 right there. I sold the STI shifters for $125 right there, so I'm up into the $300 range as opposed to the $250, $210, between $250 I was trying to sell it for. So I always think selling it in pieces is a way better option than trying to sell it all as one. Also, if you're shipping your bikes to someone else, if you're trying to sell it on eBay and stuff like that, it's way easier to ship individual components. It's way easier to ship a frame. It's way easier to ship a crankset than an entire bike. And there's way more issues that can go wrong when your bike is intact and you're trying to package it and send it. It's way easier to just send a wheel set, way easier to just send a crankset. So I always, would advise someone who is kind of getting into that scene like I was, nerding out on bikes, and you want to put bikes together. Also, what's a really cool thing about doing that is you can start to build your own dream bike by buying different bikes and keeping the pieces of a bike that you like. So you might want a new wheel set, And a great way to get a wheel set is just to buy a bike, take the wheels if you like the wheels, and sell the frame. And you'll usually make money, because people don't realize this. It's kind of like this with used guitars too. I say the same thing with used guitars. There are a lot of people out there who want to put their own pickups and their own electronics and their own things into electric guitars. So if you actually just sell them stripped out, you can make just as much money as you do selling a complete guitar, because instruments are similar to bikes in that way, that people want to make their own custom, especially with electric guitars like that. People want to make very specific mods to them, or they want specific pickups in them. They want certain tuners in them. So if you actually just strip it out and sell those things individually, you can make more money than you can with the whole thing intact. So, if you're interested in that kind of thing, like, try that. I don't make any videos about buying and selling because I just don't do it as much anymore. But when I did, I've sold, in the last couple of years, I've sold like a few bikes. But that's tend to be what I do. If the bike is in really good condition and all it needs, again, was one run repair, then you can resell it, clean it up, change a tube, whatever. But if it's kind of like a lot of things need to be changed, if more than like 2 or 3 things need to be changed, and you're like, okay, these repair bills are going over $100, you're really going to make that money back. And so I would just take it to pieces and sell the pieces. If you're able to strip bikes, then that's just as good as being able to, and it also depends. Like some component sets are older, and so, component sets from like the 80s and 90s might not sell as well. But wheels tend to sell well. Cranksets are kind of forever things where you can retrofit cranksets from all throughout the ages. So, anything from the 80s up of a crankset, you can resell. Like 90s cranksets will work on modern bikes. So there's certain things that are universal that you can resell. And then there's always people who are still riding the rim brake bikes. And so the only reason I got the disc brakes is because I have a family, and I wanted to ride my kid on the most powerful brakes I could. So I got a disc brake bike through Axle. I just felt like that is the most, the safest, and I feel the most comfortable on those. But if I was just riding on my own, I love rim brake bikes. And if you want to go fast, but you don't want to spend a ton of money, that's honestly the best way to go, is to get a used bike. When I ride with Uncle Dan on he's got a Breezer from the 90s, that has plenty of speed for the average rider. And I honestly feel a lot of the time that people overtake me on bikes, they're riding those type of bikes. The braking system is less bulky. It's lighter because they don't have an extra disc to stop the bike. It's just the rim of the brake. The brake sets are lighter. The brake calipers tend to be lighter. And so they really fly, those rim brake bikes. And like I said, a lot of the time I get overtaken by cyclists. It's cyclists on road bikes with rim frames and the skinny tires and everything. I'm getting older now. My knees are getting older. I'm getting into my mid to late 40s. So I want to ride upright and comfortable. So that's what I prioritize. But if the old school guys who are used to riding those skinnies, they don't seem to mind, and you don't know what you don't know. If you've never ridden on the tubeless tires that are super wide, you're going to make adjustments to your riding style. Like, you'll avoid bumpy areas and stuff like that. Me, I just like riding over things. So I like the combination. And I actually just like mountain bike style bikes and flat bars too. So I like that the gravel bikes are a combination of like what I really liked about 90s mountain bikes, because I really did like 90s mountain bikes with the rigid forks. I thought those were dope. So when I kind of learned more about gravel bikes, I was like, oh, the gravel bikes are literally right up my alley. So when people say that they're a gimmick, they're really made for people like me who grew up riding 90s mountain bikes, but also like road bikes. I didn't grow up riding road bikes, and it took me a little bit to get into that. So once I did get into that, drop bars and STI shifting styles and down tube shifters, I've tried them all. It took some getting used to, but once I got used to it, I kind of liked it, because I'm just the kind of person who will ride on anything if I get enough time to get used to it. But with gravel bikes specifically, when I had a little bit of money to blow and I wanted a new bike, I was like, that's kind of the perfect combination of everything. I still like a little bit of road bike, but I still like a little bit of mountain bike, 90 specifically. I don't need suspension like that. And I don't want to pay money to have extra maintenance on a suspension. I don't know how to maintain suspensions myself. I mean, I'm sure you could learn, but I just don't have time to learn, how to do more things mechanically. My time is on a crunch. And so rigid fork bikes just are less maintenance and still offer you the ability to get a little bit rugged. And I'm only riding in the city, so, that's what I'm doing. But even if you're watching my channel and you're just trying to get into bikes, because the main point of this channel is to get the enthusiasm of cycling up, is that I want to definitely give a shout out to the 90s, 80s, 90s, 2000, up into the modern style rim brake bikes. They're still super dope. There's still so many options out there. They're still making parts for them. So while that goes on, those are still a viable option. And also, a lot of the mechanics are old school mechanics who really like working on those style of bikes more than they like working on modern bikes. It can be sometimes hit and miss, especially with my Fezzari with the integrated housing, where everything goes through the headset and through the body. Some mechanics just don't want to mess with that. They really just don't. They'd rather just do it the old school way, what they're used to. If you look at a channel like the Bike Farmer, mechanics like that are all over the place. Like he's for real. Like people like him are like, I love the old school bikes. I know how to work on them. I feel comfortable with them. I won't charge you crazy amounts of money to fix them because I actually like it and I know what I'm doing and I can do it fast. That's the beauty of those bikes. So when you're looking at Uncle Dan's Breezer, that's a totally legit bike. And if you're willing to and it's made out of steel. And if you're willing to look online, you spend your time online, you can find bikes like that are totally like awesome bikes to get into cycling. Uncle Dan, he rides like miles and miles. He probably rides around 100 miles a week on that bike. So you can go the distance on that. He can literally, those are like all day type of bikes, like where you can take it on long, long adventures. And because it's steel, it's going to last. I mean, if you take care of it and you don't crash it, it'll last the rest of your life pretty much. And so that's the beauty of these bikes. And so when you're watching my channel, honestly understand that I really just have a love for all bikes. And that's why I call the people who watch my lovers, because you're bike lovers. You're here because you're not a hater. You love something and you want to connect with other people that love it too. And so that's my little splur for now about old school bikes and how much I value them and how much I really encourage people who are getting into cycling. Even if you see my videos and you see that I'm riding on new bikes, old school bikes are dope. There's nothing wrong with them. They can last you forever and the components are still out there. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to y'all soon.